Well, let me go ahead and get things started here. Thank you all so much for attending today. This is essentially a showcase of the award-winning course that Dr. McSpirit, Mary Henson put together. The Alan Alt Award is for online course excellence, and it acknowledges and rewards the development and delivery of exceptional e-campus courses that are the result of these strong partnerships. And Mary Henson's one of our senior instructional designers, seeker of good food and good life experiences of all kinds. And Dr. McSpirit, as I think all of us here know, foundation professor of sociology, horse whisperer, documentarian, multifaceted, grandparent, just super active in the campus community. Thank you all both for showing us this SOS 232, I think is the course. And just what an excellent experience students believe that it is. Take it away. Show us what you've done.
If I could share my screen, I will share our slides so we can use that as kind of our talking points. It's such a privilege for me to get to work with Steph McSpirit, and I see other friends from social work today. A lot of people I love to work with, Aaron and Ann and Steph, and this project was interesting because we started off with questions about how overall we could change the course, what we could do to make the course better. Can everybody see my screen? Are you seeing?
Sure can. Yep.
Seeing the slides? Terrific. And so we will start there with looking at the slides. So here's our course banner, and you can see in that the general description of the course.
Yeah, could I just add that just as a quick overview in terms of the class that we're going to be talking about today, SOS 232 is a required course for students in the social work program, as well as a required class for those in sociology, as well as it covers the statistical requirements for those students in the BSN program, bachelor's in Bachelor's of Science in Nursing here at EKU. I was hired here to teach SOS 232 in 1995. That was the main reason why I was hired by the sociology program in order to teach social statistics. And, you know, it's always been a struggle in terms of, attaching students to the material and the content. And so, yeah, and I've been at it for 30 years now, almost.
And we certainly benefited from those years of experience. And Aaron was talking about before, that's what good teaching is. And that's something Steph and I were talking about earlier this morning, about this recursive process of reflection. Like, what now? Who are these students now, and what do these students need? When we think about the community, the community of inquiry, and then we'll go back and we'll talk about the Steph has an interesting story about Dr. Alt that she's going to share. So I jumped ahead for a moment to tell you that all of the courses that we think about through eCampus have a focus on bringing these components together: the social presence, the cognitive presence, the teaching presence, to create this educational experience. And in the slides today and through our discussions, we'd like to talk about different ways the class went about doing that. And I really enjoyed hearing about Dr. Alt from Dr. McSpirit. So she has something to share with us.
Well, just a little story before we get started, just to show maybe my time here at the university. But Dr. Alt is known for his, for spearheading a lot of the online initiatives here at EKU way back before it became the norm. But one of the things that I want to mention about Dean Alt is back in 2000, just after I received my tenure here, there was a coal waste impoundment disaster in Eastern Kentucky. that impacted the Big Sandy River, and especially a small community called a small county in Eastern Kentucky, Martin County. And I brought that event into my research methods class, and we talked about it and how we would go about, if we could, maybe beginning to do some community-based research in that community in order to help that community with regard to the long-term recovery. And as we started to talk about that particular event, students came up to me afterwards and said, Steph, we need to go there. We need to start this project now. Okay, in terms of things. And so went to my office, thought about it, typed out a Hail Mary kind of email to all the deans as well as the university president with regard to, could everybody from each of the college provide $500 in funding in order to get a team of students in the field for the spring semester coming up. You know, I got some emails back in terms of following proper protocols and what have you from a few of the deans. But Dean Alt, about 10 minutes after sending that email, shot back a commitment of $500 from the College of Justice and Safety. And since that time, after that, you know, we were able to get a team of students in the field, and we spent 6 years in Martin County, writing grants, and university students were involved in each of those phases of grant-funded research, and we were able to develop a really neat teaching model of involving students in service and research within the region. And I attributed that a lot to Dean Alt's commitment to not just online learning, but to student engagement across the board.
As Stephanie were talking this morning, she was talking about the 3 C's, and I think the story emulates that too: community, collaboration, and connection. And that project certainly has all of those elements, but the creation of a class has these elements as well too. We think about the student community, we think about the collaboration with the Instructional Design Center, and then the connections to learning, the connections to outcomes. And Steph, is there anything else when you mentioned the 3 C's? I was so inspired by that. We added a slide this morning. So anything else?
I think all of us here know that in terms of when we have those great teaching moments, we're building community, either in real time in our classroom or through our online classes. And, you know, when you're building community, you're striving for that collaboration, breaking down hierarchies, getting people talking about the material, engaging them. And it's through that collaboration and that building a community that students become connected, right, to the professor, as well as to the content area, right? Community, collaboration, and connection. It's all about connection in the end, right?
And so much, you know, that's just another way to describe the community of inquiry, the way that Steph has done it with the 3 C's. And I just thought that was another nice way that we can remember these connections. We just want to talk very briefly about the chance to collaborate with Stephanie, which is always great. And as the subject matter expert, she had so many plans about what she wanted for the course, and she had great content, and then I was just able to jump in here and there and figure out different elements about how you know, just a suggestion about, well, we could try this, or let me help do this part and let's look together. But I think that kind of that collaboration was really rich, in part because Steph had so many direct plans for the students, and then for us to figure out how to make that happen.
Well, it was great, Mary. It was great collaborating you and having meaningful discussions with regard to how we can improve this course, social statistics, so that more students have an opportunity to be successful, not only in the class, but moving forward with regard to their degree plans.
Mm-hmm. That's such a great point, Steph, because we didn't just start off with, well, here's the course that you're going to teach, but we really started off with this. I mean, always we're looking for alignment. We want to line up the assessment, the materials, the objectives, so that all of these things are working towards the same goal. But in this course, we started out with some very particular questions.
Yeah. And again, in terms of, you know, SOS 232 from coming here in 1995, no one wanted to teach it because students put off taking statistics. It's not something that excites them like some of their other content areas in their subject field. And a lot of students put it off, this required class, until their junior or senior year. And so the question always in SOS 232, since I've been here, is how do we make the class palatable? How do we engage students? How do we connect students to the content? And how can we help so that more students succeed? And again, it's you know, it's always a struggle in terms of the drop, fail, withdrawal rates. Have always been, you know, we're always an issue with SOS 232. And I know I'm talking to some of the students, faculty from the social work program in social statistics. On any given year, in any given semester, they might range anywhere from 20 to 25%, which means that maybe 1 out of every 4 students taking SOS 232, the class was a serious barrier to entry in terms of their program area, to fulfilling their degree requirements, to getting out into the field as social workers or nurses. Okay, and so that's in terms of workforce development, in terms of our responsibilities to workforce development as professors at a public university, that's an issue. How can we improve the DFW rates? And that was what inspired our discussion with regard to the overhaul to SOS 232 that Mary and I took on 2 years ago about this time. And one of the things we decided to do is to break down the material into mini lectures or little lecture snacks. We moved towards an open source statistical software platform, because oftentimes that students would have issues with regard to purchasing the statistical software package that we previously used, SPSS. And then again, as we all know in our online classes, oftentimes the trick to being successful is just managing your time, committing the 10 to 15 hours per week to doing the material. And so we also included a time management self-assessment as additional components to our class.
And so I should say that when Steph and I were talking about this too, we were talking about really all the list of changes was longer than this. All of the things that changed in the class. I think all of the outlines, you know, just there's a lot more content, but we'll discuss many of those particular elements. These 3 things we've highlighted here in part because they are in many ways special to this class, that they're innovative kinds of changes.
You know, in terms of each module, students have to master certain core concepts within statistics and how to apply or use, or in terms of mastering the language of science. And yes, yeah. Anne wants to know if we can see an example of the time management self-assessment. Yes, and we will include that at the end. And good. But in terms of what we ended up doing with the lectures is just providing a small bite-size lecture on some of the core concepts that we were trying to convey in terms of what we mean by survey research, quasi-experimental design, in terms of the operationalizing, turning your concepts into measures, what a variable is, and so on, in terms of so students become conversant in the language of science and data analysis and research. And there was a small 10 to 15 minute lecture that we attached to each of our modules, each of the 8 modules. And in terms of using the open source statistical software, we developed short 5 to 10 minute video presentations with regard to how to do your analysis for each of the assigned modules, from just preparing the data for analysis in terms of with this statistical software, you needed to clean the data of the non-responses so it wouldn't affect your percentages. So just data cleaning, and then another video with regard to how to get Jamovi to actually provide you with frequency distributions, then crosstabs, your test of significance, chi-square, and then descriptive statistics, as well as your comparison of means or t-tests. And so, yeah, just short videos on how to get Jamovi, right, to do the statistical analyses that you want. And
Jamovi was a money saver for students, right, Steph?
yes, free, open source, online. And the other advantage is once students, in terms of job ready skills, open source for anybody. And so once they're in an agency setting or an organizational setting, they can also use the statistical software.
And what I was so impressed with is that Steph just didn't say, we're going to use this because it's free. You really dove into this software, Steph. You researched this extensively. You looked for other possibilities too. You spent, I think, a couple weeks trying to figure out if Excel could get it all done, and then determined it wouldn't, and then found this, and a lot of extensive research and practice for you in this software to make sure you could lead the students.
Yeah, Excel has its advantages in terms of managing spreadsheets and data, but for actual statistical analysis, this was a better choice in terms of meeting our course objectives. And in terms of teaching presence, you know, from some of the teaching and learning workshops, there were workshops on how to make our PowerPoints more interactive in terms of developing quizzes in our PowerPoint slides. And so along with the PowerPoint with the audio, where students could listen to the PowerPoint slides while doing the dishes or and so on. We also included that interactive element. And so that was also an additional improvement in terms of the changes we made to SOS 232 in order to better connect students to the content in the material. Yeah, and you know, and like I say, it's all about connection. And as we know, you know, in terms of making myself available through my office hours or the question board, but mostly through email. And just for example, on, you know, making, you know, in terms of a real-time quick response time to student questions in the evenings. Just on Sunday night, I was working here and a student emailed me. The blog posts were due on Friday, but you know, due dates can be sliding. But she since just sent me an email saying that, you know, Dr. McSpirit, I am so confused. I don't know what's going on in the class in terms of the data and the software. And then I just emailed her and I said, first off, just take a deep breath and just ask me a specific question. I'll be online here the whole evening grading papers. I'll be happy to field your emails. And so then I'm sure she took a deep breath because she came back with some really succinct questions that showed that she had really started to actually consider the material in module 3. And through the evening, we walked through the blog post and that was due on Friday. And again, I said she did such an excellent job that there was not going to be any late penalty. But that's the thing in terms of, as we all know, in terms of how we work. And then phone and Zoom meetings are always readily available. And one of the things in terms of connecting students to the material is I always try to identify 2 or 3 star students from the semester before who did excellent work. And then I offer them either credit hours, or they can sometimes receive funding through the Knoll Studio to serve as peer tutors or mentors for students. And a lot of students, rather than working with me, will connect through a Zoom meeting and collaborate with another university student who's already gone through the class and been successful. And they have oftentimes just great conversations rather than just talking about the content.
And this is something you've done in your class probably the last 5 years or more. Is that right?
Yeah, these students are called the SOS 232 support squad. And
as we think about learner to content interaction.
Yeah. And then, and this is something I've always done since I've been here in 1995. I use real data to give students a real research experience. And we always, since I've been here, have used the full General Social Survey, which is a large national database of public opinion. And one way that I connect students to the content through using real data is I say, hey, you are, through this class, you're gaining real job-ready skills in terms of secondary data analyses. These are things that you can put on your resume after you finish the class in terms of working with other large national databases in an agency setting or in an organizational setting in the future. And again, saying that in terms of, oh yeah, this helps connect students to the material because they can see the value ahead, the value that's added to their university degree by taking the class.
And you have heard from students that they do apply this in their jobs later.
Oh, absolutely. Or graduate school, absolutely. Yes, yes. And yeah, a lot of students afterwards, they come into SOS 232 scared, right? And worried. And what I love to see is students leaving the class in terms of, principles of community-based research, community development. They leave the class empowered. Yeah. Yeah, and again, in terms of, I always tell students, researchers just don't research, researchers write. That's the only way we can communicate our findings to the broader scientific community. And that at some level alleviates a lot of worry because a lot of students are not maybe math oriented, but they're more literary in terms of their good writing skills. And those are just as equally important in terms of doing good research. And however, in terms of in the past, I would give students writing tips on, in terms of how to write up your findings, in terms of stating your proposition, making clear what variables you are using in order to measure or operationalize those concepts in your proposition, and then reporting your findings and pointing the direction for future research. And in terms of, and reporting your findings for a crosstab and a chi-square result are a little bit different than when you're reporting your findings for a mean test. And so actually by putting those writing tips, so this time though, I have set up specific templates that students can use, right? Because they've never done this before. That they can just at some level, based on their propositions, based on their variables, based on their findings, they're in a good position in terms of writing their paragraphs up. And again, skills they don't have, and I should be giving them as much information as possible so that they can develop those skills. And and then in terms of engaging students in the writing process, not just in terms of research report writing, but we require them with each module to actually write up their results in a blog format using all the principles of scientific writing, but in an engaging way in terms of the issues that they're trying to research through the survey questions that are available in the general social survey. And then, reporting their findings on 3 variables or 3 propositions, each module. And then also commenting on and reflecting on other student blog posts by using concepts and terms from that particular module, in terms of getting conversant with regard to the language of science. Okay. Yeah.
Now, did you find 500 to 700 words is more than I sometimes see in a discussion post? But do you find that really kind of forces the issue of, as far as writing something substantive?
Yes. Oh, students who are really engaged with the material will write a full page with regard to their analyses, as we all know, in terms of yes. And but enforcing them to go back to the PowerPoint and in terms of what concepts and terms can they use in a lucid way as they develop their blog is also an important learning opportunity.
And Steph did the blogs through Adobe Express. So I'm just going to show you a little bit about that. So that presented the content in kind of a more novel way too. And this is embedded in every discussion board.
Yeah, that really helped in terms of just using Adobe Express rather than having a list of 5 or 6 items that students need to cover on the blog. You could use some photo, visual elements, and you. Yeah, and that was Mary. Thanks for, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, it slows down the student. They don't just read it really fast. They also have, some reading and some imagery to think about how those different items impact society and how all of that is part of their work in this course. So here, after that, then we get to the questions that they ask. Criteria. Also, learner to learner content is something, learner to content, and we had interactive practice in each slide. And so here's an example from Articulate Rise where they could go in and look at statistical significance in this way. And in that, asking questions and then some flashcards that were part of that. And just looking at those 2 elements and each of the, there were several interactive practice this way. This is something Steph and I were even just talking about today, is this, because I was saying, maybe as we look at it, there's even something else we want to add as we think about student outcomes now. And the thing that we've talked about a lot together is that no course is actually ever finished, right? It's a recursive process of like, what is working now? The very first redesign, we actually cut that DFW rate in half, and we thought, yay, we fixed it. In a way, we did hope that, didn't we, Steph? We thought, well, but then we looked at the numbers again, and then for the next year, and the numbers went up a little bit. So it's an ongoing quest to try to continue to meet students, and the students are changing. So what we did for students 3 years ago may not be what students today, post-pandemic, all of that need. And that's just part of this ongoing process.
Yeah.
So, and we also had some interactive flashcards with that, and so that students could kind of quiz themselves. What is a crosstab table? Do I know it? Oh, okay. That's what it is, and that's an example. I can drag that to the side. What is a proposition? Do I know that? Okay. Again, what's a proposition? There it is again. So that kind of experience we were trying to create, where they would use these as study techniques, study tips. Escape, and then I'm going to go back to view slideshow. So there we are again.
And, you know, we want students to master those terms and concepts that are really the backbone of the language of science and scientific research. And so we have no problem having students take the quiz multiple times in order to master the material that they need in order to be successful in their upper division research classes in their program areas. And so, yeah, and so it's all about, you know, not just connection, but, you know, mastery in terms of giving students multiple attempts at the quizzes. Take it once, take it again. And sometimes if I'm looking at the grade book and I see a student with a low quiz score, I'll notice that I'll email them and say, I'll note that most often they have a low quiz score because they didn't take it the second time. And then I'll probably email them and say, hey, reminder, take the quiz again. So.
And then here's the time management survey.
Yeah, you know, Anne, this is, you know, the time management self-assessment that we came up with. It's anonymous. I never look at them, but it's just a kind of a self-reflection, connecting students not only to the professor or the content, but back to themselves. You know, what can I do better in terms of, you know, and, you know, I stress, you know, this is a university course. You need to be spending anywhere from 10 to 15 hours per week on the material. And then, you know, for a module, you know, you should module total, you should be spending anywhere from 15 to 20 hours in order. And so, and this is at the end of each module, students are asked to self-reflect on how much time they spend on the module. For example, did I start the module early in the week? Oh, you know, this is in terms of an e-campus course where they go through a module each week. Did I start the module early in the week so that I had plenty of time to ask questions on the discussion board and to ask for clarification? And it just, you know, hey, yes or no. And this week I spent approximately so many hours on completing the module. And this week I was able to manage my time and attention on module assignments, yes or no. And next week I plan to do the following to stay on track with my module assignments. And it's just at some level, you know, and then Mary has an example. I'll start early next time.
And so we don't know who wrote that because the responses are anonymous, but in looking at them, we could tell that students were setting intentions each week, and those were required interactions. So they had to do that in order to get, they would get a check mark, and it amounted to
5%.
A required part of their grade. So everybody did it, really. Which, you know, and the other thing this gets to is self-efficacy, which they found in math anxiety makes a difference. When students feel like they're in control of their learning and they make a plan, that can help immensely. And I sometimes I've wondered, how could we check just this element in the course? But I do think it's been so valuable towards helping students set their intention and stay involved. I kind of wouldn't want to run a course without it. I don't know, Steph, how do you feel about that?
Well, I just remember, you know, we had one of our star students from the social work program when we were having that Zoom discussion with people from the Catalyst Award, Blackboard, when we went that particular award, and she said that now she has incorporated a time management self-assessment in all her courses on her own. So yeah, it's just hey, you know, how are we managing our time? I need it as much as they do in terms of
Think about providing clear expectations And we looked a little bit at the blog rubric there, but Steph had very clear rubrics for all 4 of these different kinds of activities. There was a lot of work to do, but they weren't always doing a different, it's not like you needed 30 rubrics for your class. You had one homework rubric, you had one for the final output, obviously, but the blogs, that was one rubric. And that way it makes the expectations very clear to your students.
Yeah. For each module, students are required to write their blog, complete their homework assignments, and also do the quiz. But there was one rubric for the blog and one for the homework. And then oftentimes if students aren't doing excellent, which many of them are, I just say, hey, make sure to have that blog, make sure to have the grading rubric out in front of you and use it as a checklist. Make sure you're covering all these points before you submit your assignments. And oftentimes those are good conversations. Oh, I didn't even know there was a rubric. Yeah, even though you make that clear in terms of the introductory module.
And we could have been looking at a lot more student evaluations. These are because so many of them just really rave reviews. Steph's evaluations are always very high. They were high before we started this course. And I just know that because she shared them with me. I don't otherwise have access, see student evaluations, but because we were trying to solve a problem. So the first thing that we did is we looked at evaluations to try to figure out what was confusing. And then in looking at the evaluations, we were able to see if the changes we made were helpful for students. And I think that overwhelmingly the evaluations anecdotally do reveal that. And we were able actually also to quantify it too, because Steph is a social statistician. So when we said, how did this class do compared to other classes, you did find there was a significant difference, right, Steph?
Yeah, in the DFW rates, there was in terms of that. Yes. And then we see that creeping up again for various reasons. And yeah, we have to address those and tackle those. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that may be again where we turn back to look at the evaluations and some of the other outcomes to see, well, is it that they need more practice in some way? Is this test score very low? Could we help by adding something? Because you were saying you thought the interactive practice did potentially help grades overall on scores.
Yes, in terms of at the end of each module. And I'm thinking, yeah, lots of things I'm getting a sense of in terms of this new cohort post-pandemic group and things that in terms of things that this group of learner might need and that we need to think about in terms of doing things differently.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, good student evaluations. Yeah, don't. I wish they were all like that.
I think the thing that always impresses me most is just to see how the energy that they have for the class that directly comes from you is received. They definitely know that you are there for them, that you know the content, that you're ready and available to talk to them, but then that you've provided that in every aspect of your class as well, Steph, is one reason I think this class is so strong, in that you've got clear directions and you've got a very clear outline of what they're supposed to do and clear guidelines and examples for what that is supposed to look like. So if anyone would wonder, what does it look like to succeed in SOS 232, the examples are there for them along the way, which goes a long way in adding to their success.
Well, thanks, Mary. Viggs has a question.
Thank you, Steph. Your exuberance for the course is evident. I wanted to ask you about what differences you have noted between post-pandemic and before the pandemic, and how has your teaching changed to accommodate that? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm grappling with a few things right now. I'm wondering in terms of time management. I know a lot of our students are coming from high schools where maybe they were able, I can't generalize too much, but I'm noticing a group of students who are thinking that they can complete the assignments without putting in the time. And a little even more so than usual. And so that's where I'm, in terms of, and that's where I'm seeing that we're seeing a tick up on those DFW rates, and just in terms of students that are coming to the assignments, submitting them, or asking a question on Thursday afternoon, and everything is due on Friday. I'm seeing a little bit more of that, and same with my tutors are feeling a little bit of burnout with regard to that as well. And so, yeah, time management might be one of them. I know a lot of students too are facing multiple traumas, not just from the pandemic, but from the disaster in Eastern Kentucky, and also, and things that are facing them on the home front that makes maybe even learning even more of a hurdle than it was previously. And so the question becomes, how do we start to show some grace in terms of bringing those students into our community and a community of learners and connecting them with the material. Yeah, all of us, all faculty are struggling with the same issues, Vigs. I'd love for us to have a candid discussion through Chris, a workshop on that. Absolutely. Your thoughts, Vig? Yeah.
Yes, that is something which I have noticed as well. Students seem to be dealing with a lot more health issues with their family members and with themselves. So they will be there in class and they will then not be there. So for courses which are very time intensive, and if we imagine that if they are taking 4 classes and all 4 of them are as time intensive, well, something has got to give, right? So, and I've noticed the students they have very strong family connections and they will put that first. So at the expense of courses.
Yes.
So that is the challenge. You put it so well about, how to handle it with grace, that is really needed. So with compassion, maybe a little bit of humility, because it can touch us as well as easy as anyone else.
That's excellent point about compassion, Vig. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. These are.
This is an overview of the course. Sam Williamson, our former media producer, put this together, which I think lets us see different things about this course. And we use this for the Blackboard Catalyst nomination, which the course won in 2022. And then the course that was submitted for the Alan Alta Award, we made a few adjustments. We added some interactive practice and some other elements for the Alan Alta Award. After we watch this, I think that's the very last thing we have on the slides, and we'd like to open the floor for questions.
Hi, I'm Dr. Stephanie McSpirit, and I've been teaching social statistics for nearly 30 years in Eastern Kentucky.
Let me do that. Oh, I'm sorry, that was the wrong thing.
As a researcher and professor, it's a subject I love to share with students.
Do we want to?
Some students don't always love data analysis and statistics the same way I do, and some of them truly struggle with the subject. In fact, the drop-fail withdrawal rate in my online undergraduate social statistics class has always been a concern to me. With help from our instructional design center, together we made some substantial changes to the course to better account for the needs and concerns of low-performing students especially. These are some of the changes we made. To improve student outcomes, we added more conceptual videos describing fundamental concepts in statistics, data analysis, and the scientific method. To save students money, we changed to an open source statistical platform that that was freely and easily downloadable to students. 5 students with real research experience continued to use the full General Social Survey as their data source and made use of the interactive GSS Explorer website, which allows students to easily search for variables based on their own topics of interest. To increase interest and engagement even further, we created weekly blogs for students based on their own analysis and reporting of real-world issues and survey questions from the General Social Survey. To encourage writing for understanding, we provided weekly writing tips and templates to support students as they develop skills of data analysis, interpretation, and scientific reporting. To promote study and understanding, I allowed students 2 attempts per weekly quiz to encourage student growth. To foster planning and time management, I required students to complete a weekly time management self-assessment to keep them on track with managing their time and course responsibilities. Did these changes help? All the data so far says yes. With the course changes that our team made, the DFW rate was nearly cut. This suggests that otherwise low-performing students are now no longer low-performing, and they're finding a path to success in social statistics. But these course changes not only affected at-risk students. Based on student course evaluations and student comments, all students reported improvements in their Blackboard learning experience in Social 32. While I certainly love research, data analysis, and statistics, as a university professor, I also love teaching university students. And these changes and improvements in student learning outcomes have made me one happy professor.
What questions do you have or what comments?
Well, I'll be open for any questions or feedback in terms of next steps, in terms of improving the class.
And we were just talking this morning about maybe adding some other practice elements. That's one thing. Steph, was there anything else that you think?
Well, each module, right, builds on the next in terms of getting students to a point where they can feel competent writing a full-blown statistical research report. And so we were thinking about, in terms of the interactive component, is adding kind of a summary component in terms of what you learned in module 2 before you start module 3. Just as a reminder, again, as Vig was saying, students have a lot on their plate. They're taking 4 classes as well as dealing with a lot of other things. How can we help them, engage in the content? Yes, that was an important one that we were talking about this morning.
Well, thank you for your work on that. I know that it takes a lot of gumption and passion for your work and commitment to students to retool a class that you've developed. And I mean, and retooling your class to be more user-friendly, I don't know how you would say, but to decrease the DFW rate and also to use Jamoji. Maybe I'm using the right. Maybe I'm saying that right. Hopefully I'm saying it right. Moving away from SPSS. We'll just go with that. Way to go. I mean, that took so much energy and commitment. I really appreciate your effort on that and for sharing your experience with us. It's really inspirational.
Well, thanks, Ann. Like in terms of the social work program and the nursing program, as well as sociology, whenever, whatever you hear in the hallways or in your advising sessions with students with regard to their experience in SOS 232, please let me know. I mean, I'll take it so that we can continue to improve on it. I'm used to taking things on the chin.
I'm impressed about Mary's comment about how you moving away from a paid product doesn't necessarily mean a better experience for anybody. And that you took the time to really make sure that, you know, this is a win-win for everybody, that not only are they going to save money, but they'll have a similar experience professionally. The skills will transfer. That's a big one too. And so thanks for taking the time for that. Like, that's what you could just have said, just go pay XYZ company and I'll be done with it. But, you know, that's a big deal. And I don't think people appreciate how much, evaluating a tech tool or, a technology is. So thanks for that.
Well, and like we all know here, I know in terms of our book program now, that's been a godsend. But before then, in terms of things, having the money available in order to buy the software or the books can be a serious barrier, right? Yeah.
It was
Also, they will see the software, the SPSS software in other classes. So having been exposed to statistical software in multiple ways is actually better for them, so that whatever, and so much of it is now also being done just simply online, because there are many tools available which are browser based, which will allow them to do those things. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the same with using secondary data in terms of once they've gone through using the general social survey in terms of their master's projects or their undergraduate theses projects, pulling down a national database from the CDC or from Kentucky in terms of our injury prevention data set, kids count data sets, and so on. Trying to develop those transferable skills that they can put on their resume. Absolutely.
Is there a way we can have access to some part of your course, like through a shell or something, just to see how you have structured it? Like if that would be fabulous, if you could.
Sure. I think, Mary, we can make that available, right?
Yeah, we can do that. Let's talk about how you want to do that, Steph. If you want to do just like a module, or you want to do the whole course, or
whole course. Why not?
whole course. Okay.
Oh, you're so generous. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll set up a shell, and yes. And you can know that, Steph. And so then if anybody wants to be enrolled, like Anne, would you like to be enrolled as well? Okay. So
Yes,
then I'll add Anne and then Steph, you'll
Learn
just
from
have
the feet of the master. So it'll be good.
For sure.
I'd love to use that time management survey if you don't care. I mean, that is just, I would love to see data on that. How many, you mentioned, Mary, you mentioned self-efficacy. I mean,
Yeah.
and then using data to compare how many students that have completed, the students that have completed that in the course and the students that haven't completed it because they're in the course. It would just be interesting to see if there's any difference in outcomes in terms of self-efficacy, ownership over out of the grade that they received in the class. I think that there'd be a greater acceptance of the outcome of the grade if there's a sense of recognition of how much they put into it. I mean, theoretically.
Yeah. Oh, here's a link to our slides. At the end of that, we do have some references that talk about writing for purpose, and also just some of the other elements that we used in the course we mentioned here, including self-efficacy.
And then I guess, can we make available the instrument that we use? We put it together quick in terms of, I'm always thinking about how am I using my time? So, and things like that. But yeah, to make that instrument available. Yeah. I always have to. A good week is when we stay on track, and other weeks we're not so good. Doing that ourselves. So.
I know we're almost out of time, and I already said this, but I can't really say it enough. I mean, I just appreciate your inspiration. You've been at EKU for 30 years. You're a foundation professor. I mean, it would be so, in a way, so easy to stop reinventing yourself, but you've reinvented yourself, and it's just phenomenal. And I so appreciate you for that.
Yes.
Oh, shucks. Thanks, Anne. Thank you. Gosh. Well,
and I so agree, because like her evaluations, the ones she showed me before we started this, they were already great. So it's, a lot of people would have been happy with great evaluations, but she's like, you know what, there's still too many students for me that are not succeeding. And so
Well, 1
she's-
out of every 4 guys, you know, in terms of those DFW rates, and that, yeah, and so, yeah, that's, you know, student evaluations, but those that, you know, don't even get to evaluate. So that's, but well, I appreciate this opportunity to spend this time with Mary and everybody who joined us, to really appreciate it. Thank you, Chris, for putting this together.
Thank you. Same, you've had the same interest and enthusiasm since I met you in 1999, embedded in those labs, having to come to the actual computer lab, you know, week after week, every week. Students in there. Same
Corralling
interest
those
and
students
enthusiasm.
into the lab. Come on,
Yeah.
guys. We're going to
Yeah,
learn.
but the same positivity, it really is a wonderful thing to see. So thank you. And thanks to Mary for, you know, partnering. Really appreciate that, you all.
Well, hopefully I'll see everybody on campus. Feel free to email me. I'd love to have coffee with any of you anytime soon.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye.
Thank you all so much.